Hey everybody, how's it going? Thiago here and welcome to another video. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Happy Sunday, and here we are again for another Sunday video or Sunday episode because I decided that this content today is also going to be available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify because again, we are reading a little bit today. We are reading this little book right here. Look at how small, guys. How short, how thin this book is. But it is a little book packed with useful information, okay? Before we start though, if you are new here, I created this channel and podcast to help intermediate and advanced learners of English communicate with more confidence, more accuracy, more clarity, and of course, more awareness. If this sounds like something you want for yourself in your English, subscribe to the channel and follow the videos I'll be posting here week after week, okay? And if you are on Apple or Spotify, follow the show and don't miss a single episode. So the book I'm going to be talking to you today about is this one here by Peter Drucker. And it's called Managing Oneself, all right? Peter Drucker is famous among business people, entrepreneurs, because he's often described as the founder of modern management. He wrote many books, many articles on the topic of management in business, how to be a better manager, boss, leader, those kinds of topics. But he also happened to write this little book here called Managing Oneself. In this little book, he talks about the importance of managing you, the individual. How can each individual, each person, better manage themselves? All right? And like I said, it's such a thin little book, but it's so powerful. I really recommend you grab a copy. I'm going to leave a link to this book in the description of the video or in the show notes. If you are interested in buying it, I really recommend you buy it because it is really, really nice. I just want to read one little part here, one short passage from this book. I'm going to read the short passage first, and then after that, I'm going to explain some vocabulary that I thought was interesting from this part, okay? And in this part, he talks about the importance of knowing how you learn. If you want to better manage yourself, you need to know how you learn best. And if you are following me here on YouTube or on Apple or Spotify, wherever you are listening now, it's because you are interested in learning English more, improving your English, right? Getting to a more advanced level of English. You are learning the language. But have you ever asked yourself this question? How do I learn? How do I learn best? All right. So this short passage from the book encourages us to reflect, to ponder, to think. Listen. How do I learn? The second thing to know about how one performs is to know how one learns. Many first-class writers, Winston Churchill is but one example, do poorly in school. They tend to remember their schooling as pure torture. Yet, few of their classmates remember it the same way. They may not have enjoyed the school very much, but the worst they suffered was boredom. The explanation is that writers do not, as a rule, learn by listening and reading. They learn by writing. Because schools do not allow them to learn this way, they get poor grades. Schools everywhere are organized on the assumption that there is only one right way to learn, and that it is the same way for everybody. But to be forced to learn the way a school teaches is sheer hell for students who learn differently. Indeed, there are probably half a dozen different ways to learn. There are people like Churchill who learn by writing. Some people learn by taking copious notes. Beethoven, for example, left behind an enormous number of sketchbooks. Yet, he said he never actually looked at them when he composed. Asked why he kept them, he is reported to have replied, "If I don't write it down immediately, I forget it right away. If I put it into a sketchbook, I never forget it, and I never have to look it up again." Some people learn by doing. Others learn by hearing themselves talk. A chief executive I know who converted a small and mediocre family business into the leading company in its industry was one of those people who learned by talking. He was in the habit of calling his entire senior staff into his office once a week and then talking at them for 2 or 3 hours. He would raise policy issues and argue 3 different positions on each one. He rarely asked his associates for comments or questions. He simply needed an audience to hear himself talk. That's how he learned. And although he is a fairly extreme case, learning through talking is by no means an unusual method. Successful trial lawyers learn the same way, as do many medical diagnosticians, and so do I. Of all the important pieces of self-knowledge, understanding how you learn is the easiest to acquire. When I ask people, "How do you learn?" most of them know the answer. But when I ask, "Do you act on this knowledge?" few answer yes. And yet, acting on this knowledge is the key to performance, or rather, not acting on this knowledge condemns one to non-performance. Am I a reader or a listener? And how do I learn? Are the first questions to ask. But they are by no means the only ones. To manage yourself effectively, you also have to ask, do I work well with people? Or am I a loner? And if you do work well with people, you then must ask, in what relationship? Some people work best as subordinates. General George Patton, the great American military hero of World War II, is a prime example. Patton was America's top troop commander. Yet, when he was proposed for an independent command, General George Marshall, the U.S. Chief of Staff, and probably the most successful picker of men in U.S. history, said, "Patton is the best subordinate the American Army has ever produced, but he will be the worst commander." Some people work best as team members. Others work best alone. Some are exceptionally talented as coaches and mentors. Others are simply incompetent as mentors. Another crucial question is, do I produce results as a decision maker or as an advisor? A great many people perform best as advisors, but cannot take the burden and pressure of making the decision. A good many other people, by contrast, need an advisor to force themselves to think. Then they can make decisions and act on them with speed, self-confidence, and courage. This is a reason, by the way, that the number 2 person in an organization often fails when promoted to the number 1 position. The top spot requires a decision maker. Strong decision makers often put somebody they trust into the number 2 spot as their advisor. And in that position, the person is outstanding. But in the number 1 spot, the same person fails. He or she knows what the decision should be, but cannot accept the responsibility of actually making it. Other important questions to ask include, do I perform well under stress? Or do I need a highly structured and predictable environment? Do I work best in a big organization or a small one? Few people work well in all kinds of environments. Again and again, I have seen people who were very successful in large organizations flounder miserably when they moved into smaller ones. And the reverse is equally true. The conclusion bears repeating. Do not try to change yourself. You are unlikely to succeed. But work hard to improve the way you perform, and try not to take on work you cannot perform or will only perform poorly. Interesting, right, guys? So that's a short passage, a short segment from this little book talking specifically about how do you learn. It's more a series of questions that we read and we are encouraged to think about, right? We can say that this is good food for thought, okay? It's an expression. When something gives you food for thought, like this book, it makes you think more deeply about a topic. It's almost like the book, in this case, is feeding our brains. It's giving our brains some food, to consume and to think about. All right. So I want to invite you guys to reflect on these questions and reflect on how you learn best. Okay. Before I close today's video, I want to point out here some nice vocabulary that I saw reading this passage here to explain to you guys. So the first one is boredom. Boredom. When he was talking about Churchill at school, he said that he experienced boredom. Boredom is the noun form for the adjective bored. Okay, so if I feel bored, I am experiencing boredom. Okay, boredom is what we call the situation. All right. This is a nice phrase. Look, indeed, there are probably half a dozen ways to learn. The word indeed means the same as in fact. It works like a linking word, like a conjunction, When you want to emphasize something you're saying, you can say indeed, blah, blah, blah. The same as in fact, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Usually we tend to use indeed at the beginning of a new sentence and with a comma right after that. Okay? Nice phrase here from the passage. Some people learn by taking copious notes. Copious. Copious is something in abundance. It's a lot of something. So, some people learn by taking lots and lots of notes. An abundance of notes. That's the meaning of copious here. Okay? Now, this word, guys, look at that. It's a hard one to pronounce. Yeah? Diagnosticians. Okay? Diagnosticians. That's a mouthful. Yeah, I think I explained that in this week's video. If you call a word a mouthful, it's because that word is really hard to pronounce because it's long and full of syllables, like this one. This word is a mouthful, all right? Diagnosticians, all right? People who perform diagnosis, right? Another nice word here, subordinate. We're talking about companies, right? The way companies are structured, usually you have the superiors, people on top, like the founders, the managers, right? The supervisors, and the subordinates, the people who work under the managers, the supervisors, okay? So subordinate is the opposite of superior in this case, all right? And finally, the last part, nice phrasing here. The conclusions bear repeating. Actually, excuse me. The conclusion bears repeating. When something bears repeating, it is worth saying it again. It is worth repeating. So his point is, you have to focus on performing better. That's his main idea here. Don't focus on changing yourself, but focus on improving your performance, how you can perform better. All right? Guys, that's it for this video. Again, I really recommend you check out this little book. I'm going to leave the link to this book in the description of the video. If you are interested, you can buy it. It's really short. I think in one sitting, yeah, in maybe just in 1 hour, maybe, or even less, you can actually get through this book and finish it. But it has some good food for thought, some good ideas here for us to think about when it comes to better managing ourselves. This is Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. Thank you so much for watching today. Subscribe to the channel, follow the channel, share the channel with friends and family. If you are on Apple or Spotify, give me a 5-star review. This helps the show a lot here. And I'll be talking to you guys very, very soon. All right? Take care.